In this video, I'm going to talk to you about my experiences living with the Origin Live Calypso Mark V turntable and their Conqueror Mark IV tone arm, what they were like to set up, live with for months and enjoy. And I think that word enjoy really encapsulates my experiences because this Origin Live turntable setup has made it really easy for me to just enjoy listening to records. And the reason why I think we do it in the first place, vinyl's unique sound. But this is not a cheap setup and it's not perfect either. So we have a huge amount to cover here. Let's crack on. Origin Live are a very long established specialist turntable or really vinyl playback manufacturer that are UK based, and they essentially make all of their products by hand. I've actually been to their factory in Southampton to see all this for myself, and after seeing the guys working and the high caliber of the manufacturing, I definitely have a greater appreciation for their products as a result. And I made a video of my visit to the factory, and if you haven't seen it, I would strongly recommend it to you, as company founder Mark Baker shares some super interesting and useful insights into vinyl playback. There's something in that video for everyone, I feel. Both the Calypso turntable and Conqueror tone arm sit in about the middle of the overall Origin Live product range. And normally the middle of a manufacturer's range is a great spot for a lot of bang for the buck. But these are not cheap products. The Calypso turntable costs £3,170, and this is the new version with the multi-layer platter. And the Conqueror tone arm is actually the top of the middle. It's the top of what Origin Live call their premium tone arms, and it costs about the same, £3,100. So the total cost here of just north of £6,000 is a serious chunk of money for a turntable setup, but it's not crazy expensive when we look at the whole analog world. But I think it costs enough. I think it's premium priced enough for me to rightly have very high expectations. And that starts with the unboxing and setup experience, which I would say is just about right. Origin Live did offer to come and set this all up for me, but I wanted to do it myself so that I could get the same experience that you might do if you bought these and took these home. And reading through the instructions, it was pretty easy to follow, but there were a few things that caught me out, and it was great to have the OL guys at the end of the phone to give me some support. So I'm going to share some of the pointers that they gave me here. But first impressions were definitely all good. The turntable's main plinth felt well built and solid, although not overly heavy. I think the main concept here for the design is all about balance. Performance to cost balance for starters, but there is a balance to the design that I appreciate more now looking back over all this footage some months later. Starting with the all-important centrally strung aspect, you can clearly see. And OL mentioned the use of a high specification sub-chassis and suspension on their website, but also the circular sections, or heavy inertia discs as they are called, are part of the aesthetic but also there for vibration management, and it's an interesting way to manage vibration different to springs or other methods we see used. The platter is also very interesting because it's the new multi-layer platter, and it's pretty obvious to see different layers to it. And I thought the platter was acrylic and then with an OL strata platter mat screwed to the top. And I checked this with Origin Live because I have one of their strata platter mats here, and they told me the strata has a solid base, as you can see, and that's important for its design because it allows it to be flexible to go on any platter of any turntable. But they told me that with their own platters, because this becomes integrated as part of the whole design, there's no need to have a hard base, and that allows them to take the whole design of this multi-layer even further. And what's interesting about that is this is a great platter mat. This is my favorite platter mat by far. It really emboldens and enriches the sound right up my street, that is. So to have something that's offering better performance than this is really, interesting and impressive, and it actually makes sense. To get set up, we have to install the Mark IV turntable bearing that has a tungsten carbide ball bearing that you can see. And Noel showed me when I was at the factory just how tight their tolerances are for the manufacturing of parts like this. And it's crazy tight. And I wish I could remember the exact tight tolerance or the tolerance they told me. It was like, I want to say microns, but I don't think that could be it. But it was crazy, crazy tight. And I just think that's great. It's great to know, for especially for the manufacturing of parts, really important turntable parts like this. But before we install the bearing, we have to drip some of the included oil into the bearing housing, making sure there is a little overshoot. And I was really quite concerned about getting this right, but I needn't have worried. You just take your time and it's easy, and you can have a few attempts at getting the oil right. Then caught me impressed when I lowered the platter down and gave it a little spin, and the platter went on spinning seemingly forever. Literally, this is clearly a testament to the build quality of this thing. Next, I unboxed the Conqueror. I love that name, by the way. I unpacked the Conqueror tone arm, and it's a very nicely built thing that when you hold it in your hands, it's not overly heavy or overly flashy to look at, and it's surprisingly light, but still feels pretty solid. But don't install it like you can see here in the video, as the huge bolt and washer go underneath, of course, so you can tighten the tone arm to the arm board. And I tightened that massive bolt just with my fingers, as tight as I could with my fingers, because I was scared to damage something. And it's been absolutely fine, but I think in hindsight, I would have put a spanner on that just to give it that little bit of extra security, just for fitting for what it's worth. One of the things that caught me out here with the tone arm design is the screw type bolt that is sticking very much out of the side. And I wasn't sure if I was supposed to remove that, but you don't. That is the lock for the VTA adjustment, which is done by turning the circular mechanism that raises or lowers the whole tone arm. And I found this whole mechanism, after I got used to it, to be a great tool, because there's markers on it and there's an arrow on it. And because I could see an arrow, I could, when I was listening and I was trying to dial in VTA by ear, which is really a great skill that I've now developed, I could look at that arrow and think, right, I'm going to do a quarter turn, or I'm going to do a half turn. And because there was markers, because there was an arrow, it was easy for me to visualize the adjustments I was making. So I could, confidently make a big adjustment by a quarter turn and then come back a half of a quarter, or do a half turn and come back a quarter. So like a really simple way to do it, but a simple solution, well executed, that, kudos to that design, because it really makes setting VTA very, very easy. And one other thing I liked about the Conqueror is the lockable counterweight. I like the look of it for starters, the balance of the whole tone arm, some of it being black and some of it silver, but I also like being able to get it right and then secure it just in case of a clumsy accident. Now, one thing that I love about this tone arm is the cable that's inside. Well, not so much the cable, I'm sure that's great, but it's the connectors that are on the cartridge end, because they're silver plated and high quality. That's great. But one thing I've learned very quickly with vinyl is that different manufacturers don't all have the same cartridge size pins on their cartridges, and that's ridiculous to me. So I hate having to take a pin and then try and squish it down to be a tight fit on a smaller connector. And I figured there must be a better way. And Origin Live have a better way. Their silver plated high quality connectors have what I'm going to call like a splay clip. So they expand, they start off tight and expand to fit the different size pin. So that makes the fiddly job of installing a cartridge infinitely easier, especially with different cartridges and different size pins on them. So it's a great thing. Kudos to this design. It's a really simple thing. It makes a huge difference, because it's making my life as the consumer and my life as the person using this turntable easier. And I definitely want to talk about the included silver hybrid 2 tone arm cable, because this is an absolute cracker of a cable. Yes, the angled DIN connector was nice, and the rhodium RCA connectors are nice. And there are loads of extra connections here that I didn't really understand what they were all for. I was told to just connect the ground connector And this made for a very quiet connection between the turntable and the phono stage. Probably the quietest connection I've had so far since I've been messing around with vinyl, which is not very long, but still this is standout to me. And this whole Silver Hybrid 2 cable, you can buy it yourself, and it's a £580 retail price cable. So to have that included with the tone arm, I think is a really nice thing. And I actually nearly forgot to install another of the nice included upgrades, the Origin Live cartridge enabler, which is another layer of vibration, isolation and absorption between the cartridge and the arm. And you can easily see what it is and easily guesstimate what it's looking to do. But I didn't test listening with and without it. I apologise for that. I just installed it and then just left it. But you could buy one of these to test for yourself. They're sold separately and it's only £27. So it's not an expensive thing to test and to try. But I think it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, to add an extra level of, isolation between the cartridge and the tone arm. The motor for the turntable is in a separate housing. That is quite sizable, but it's not overly heavy, and it's probably my least favourite aspect to the overall turntable design. I think it looks nice, it's definitely easy to use and set up, and you twist on once for 33 and twist the same direction or twice for 45, and it's totally fine. It's just not my favourite part of the design. Although inside, OL will say the motor is very high quality and Swiss made, and the power supply is supposed to be improved from previous models, which sounds great, but this is all powered from a very typical looking power brick, which is fine, but nothing to get excited about for me. Once the table was leveled, I could fit and install the motor pod and the belt and start to get the speeds dialed in. I did the obligatory phone RPM tests and tweaking, and this was made much easier because I had the OL Gravity 1 record clamp here to rest my phone on top of. I actually got a slightly better result later by putting a bit more tension by moving the pod slightly further away, and that gave me a little bit more control with the screwdriver on the actual motor itself for dialing things in. But either way, I think these speeds were good, everything was set up good. I was really happy and looking forward to cracking on to many months of listening to records. So with everything set up and dialed in, what does the Origin Live turntable and tone arm sound like? Well, because it's been here for a number of months, I've been reviewing other components. There's been a lot of system component changes. But more recently, for about the last 6 or so weeks, I've been listening to a more real-world priced digital setup. And now comparing that to this vinyl setup's totally different. I actually think the Origin Live turntable vinyl setup with the other bits you can see there is now sounding better in ways than the digital side of this system that's here. It costs more, but it's sounding better. And that's a massive turnaround for me. And I'm now I'm just able to really enjoy listening to records. I've kind of fine-tuned and dialed things in, set things up. I'll link a video up there, which is a bit of a discovery. It's really made a difference. But this is definitely large in part due to this being a quiet turntable setup. So the analog high gain, high background noise or hiss or hum is really minimized here. It's still there, of course, but it's not as invasive as it could be. And that's a big one for me. The cartridge I am using is the Sumiko Starling, which is an approximate £2,000 high-end moving coil cartridge that I really like because it has a full and punchy sound that's nicely balanced for detail and dynamics. So it's not prioritizing one over the other, but it's still great at retaining the smaller details of the vinyl sound. And by that I mean like the harmonics or the overtones, or I don't even know what you'd call it, those extra bits of the analog, the vinyl analog sound, that slightly warm, slightly, nice vinyl sound character that I think is a big part of the motivator why people choose to listen to vinyl in the first place. And also the slightly higher 0.5 millivolts output of the Starling works great with the Modrite PH9 phono stage that I also found sounds infinitely better if you just leave it on for days. And then the speakers, I think, are great, the SVS Titans, because they are not too brutally resolving and they mask a little bit of the small details in favour of a full and rich and really ballsy sound. So that is helping to keep the unwanted vinyl noise at bay, I think, for the betterment, but they deliver a lot of bass, and that works great for vinyl for me. But there is still a lot of the really pleasing vinyl sound character that I just mentioned coming through. So the whole system is just really clicking for me now. And sometimes when you review and you change things so much, when things just by chance sometimes just all click and work great together, it's a fantastic feeling. And if this was you and if this was your system, the feeling would be, I can listen to any music, I can listen to music all day, I want to listen to music day after day after day, and I enjoy every single second of it. But to try and be a little more specific, I have made some notes about some of the more mainstream records that I've listened to that I will share with you. So first record, Daft Punk, Random Access Memories. I think we all know this one, most people probably own it. This is an anniversary edition, 10th anniversary edition. This is a cracking pressing. So what did I write about this? So I wrote, Daft Punk, warm, full and rich, great bass in capital letters, good space, great dynamics, good projection into the room, great scale, clean, quiet, smooth, lovely organic character and tangible. You can reach out and touch the music, it's that strong. Turn it up and be happy, totally satisfied, even with the crazy fast pieces, sensationally good. I think that says it all. Good start, right? The second record, something totally different. James Taylor's Greatest Hits. I bought this off of eBay. So this is probably, 30 years old, 40 years old, something like that. What did I write about this? So James Taylor's Greatest Hits. Good soundstage depth. A bit spindly sounding, but that's this album. It's still really warm with a lovely organic character and smooth, but still sharp in the transients. Big full percussive bass, which is amazing for this album. It's a bit noisier, but this record is really old, still totally satisfying and sensationally good. The next record is in acoustic. This is an in acoustic pressing, the Cable guys that I've been to see. I bought this off of Amazon, and it's like an audiophile recording, a reference, recording album. But the reason why I bought this is because it's got a really great variety of music on it, and I like that. I like listening to different things. So what did I write about this? So this whole record sounds incredible, and it's a nice mixture of music, which is why I bought it. Record 2, side 1A. It's big, it's full, it's very dynamic. The bass again is superb. It's a little fat, but in a nice way. It's throaty and bouncy. That's my favourite bass. It's maybe not the last word in articulation listening to this, but it has a very live energy about it. And I was cranking the album and cranking the volume, which I have the Diablo 300 integrated amplifier here at the moment. And when that gets up to around 33 on the volume, which is about pretty high, the amplifier just goes nuts. It sounds absolutely amazing. But I played this album for one song, which is on that side A, which is Dina Washington, What a Difference a Day Makes. And that's a fantastic track on this album because it has like that old world character to it, like a little bit of a raw edge to it, but the vocal character sounds gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and there's just like this vibe to that track, and it's totally different to all the other songs on that whole album because it's got like this old vibey character that just makes you feel nostalgic, but you listen to it with this like raw edgy liveliness and you just go, oh, what an experience it was listening to that song, the whole album really, but especially that song on this system. A real cracker. So this is Adele 25, and I don't even need my notes for this one because I'll remember this. So this would be like the last vinyl anyone would ever expect to sound good, and when I bought it, I listened to it, I really wasn't very impressed by it, but listening to it on this setup, it was only yesterday that I listened to this. Wow, the vocal, even in the belty bits, the vocal character coming off this with this setup here was absolutely fantastic. And that was in Hello. I'm talking about Hello, first track. And then later in the record, when the more bassy tracks start coming in, the bass off this from the SVSs and the turntable setup was, wow, where's all this come from? Where's this like big bass come from? The bass I've been missing, wanting. It's now all there. So yeah, I love this. This was a great album to listen to. And I know it's not everyone's favourite, and maybe you wouldn't believe me, but trust me, this is sounding fantastic. Lovely, with lovely warm organic character, which you don't normally get from Adele, do you? But trust me, it was there. So yeah, massively impressive. And I could go on, I could list absolutely loads. I think you get the idea by now. And even like something totally different, like my remastered special edition Black Album by Metallica, that had obviously like a raw energy about it, but even that was really pleasurable. It's really, as I mentioned, easy to sit, and listen to anything with this setup. And that's what I really like, because I like being able to listen to a variety of music. I get bored really quickly when it comes to music. I like to mix it up. And I find I'm doing that more with vinyl than even I do with digital. Listen to one side. Wow, let's go try something else. Wow, let's go try something else. And that's quite a great place to be, because it shows I'm excited. I'm excited to listen to the next track. And does it get better than that in terms of a feeling? Overall, I think the main standout sonic strengths of this OL vinyl setup for me is the music's light-footed nimbleness. And by that I mean you get to appreciate the overtones or the musical information you hear or experience between the main notes or elements. And this knits the whole picture together and gives music a lovely vibe and flow about it. And this aspect is the bit that's really been obviously better than the much less expensive digital setup that I have been using in this exact same system. And then the other main key strength for me with this OL turntable setup is its lack of weakness. And by that I mean not everything is absolutely perfect. You don't listen to it and think this is all absolutely perfect, but you can't hear a weakness in it really either. And I think that just shows that this is like a very well developed products, or these are very well developed products over a period of time. So because there's no obvious flaw, yes, there might not be an obvious wow or an obvious exceptional aspect to their performance, but because there's not any weak points, I think the sum of the overall parts ends up being greater than if there was something that's really great and something that's not so great. So that's where I think the OL guys have been really clever here with this overall turntable setup design. But nothing is perfect, and I would have said more bass from this setup would have suited me better. But now with the SVS speakers being driven by the big Griffin amplifier, I don't feel like that at all. Far from it actually. But I have felt like that at times with other setups and components I have had here. And I also have some usability niggles. The yoke on the tone arm is very wide. So when you cue the tone arm up on the outer edge of the record and then you go to drop the lever and the yoke are very close together. And at first, as I put my finger around to do that, I was knocking the yoke across the record. And I had to retrain myself to do it with more of a straight finger rather than a hook finger. So this is a minor niggle, but something that I butted my head up against them. And also with the motor pod, it's nice, it's got a nice clunky reassuring twist to the main knob, but turn once, turn twice to 45. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You get used to it really quickly, but I think I would prefer, buttons, a button for 33 and a button for 45. So this is again, like a minor niggle, but a niggle nonetheless. And also the hanging side bias system. I have knocked that off by mistake a couple of times when I have removed the soft cloth that I am using as a dust cover. And I have been wondering why there's not some kind of rubber stopper or something to secure that whole mechanism once you've set it up. So it's like, get it right, set it and forget. But apart from that, a whole side bias mechanism, this is the first setup I've used that's got one. I haven't really paid too much attention to it. So it's just seemingly done its job absolutely fine. But I'm wondering whether there's some tweaking in that I could have done to maybe get better sound. I really don't know, but that's been my experience. So time to sum up this very long review. I have had a blast with these Origin Live products, and right now I have absolutely no desire to want to change them out of the system. I could happily listen to them much more. But these are only the middle of the range Origin Live products, and of course I have to know what the more expensive best products sound like at some point. But coming back down to earth for a minute, £6,000 or over £6,000 is a lot of money for a turntable setup. And how do I concisely sum this up? I think if you like the look of this turntable, because it's quite a modern look, different to our traditional turntables that have the wood covers. This is quite a modern look and also quite understated. I think it's a more substance over style type of design. So if you like the look, I think then you will really, there's a very, very good chance you're going to really like the sound as well. Of course, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but I think it ticks a lot of the right boxes. Like I said, it's hard to find a fault here. It's hard to find that weak point, which I think is the whole point of the design, the balance, as I mentioned before. Now, it's impossible. I can't pull apart the tone arm for the turntable and tell you where the real value lies between the two. I'm sorry about that. That's something I definitely need to work on, of course. So I would say as a pairing, to sum them up in one simple word, I would just use the word great. I think they're great. And I have to, give a clap for Origin Live. This is a really great turntable setup for the money that I've massively enjoyed my time with. So I hope you've enjoyed the review in the same vein. If you have, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe button down there to the channel.